And I'm recording. Okay. But I was gonna keep doing that. All right, we're gonna get started with the second lecture. I only wanted to take a look at how many. Let me just post in Slack. I just want to get a kind of a heads up here. That's the lecture.
Do you mean to be in the Stanley directory or?
Oh, is that? Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Let me edit this. Let me get rid of the Stanley. Sorry. Is this what I'm in? Yeah. To make go to our.
Totally. Joe. Unit 3 is really short, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, correction. The last 3 units are really short. They're only like 2 weeks apiece, right?
We only have, what do we got? We're in week 7, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Only 5 weeks left. Yeah. So they're short. This one's shorter.
I think, isn't it 13 weeks?
Oh, it's 13 weeks. Yeah. So 6 weeks. What do we do to represent? What was the other one? Counter. Okay. I'm just doing a poll. Give me 1 second. Represent. Completed represent working counter and counter. Boom. All right. I just put out a poll. Just trying to get a feel of how everyone was doing during the. Oh, I screwed up the poll.
I was gonna say it doesn't say anything.
Yeah. No, hold on 1 second. Don't do the poll yet. Don't do the poll. I'm just gonna fix this. All right. Delete the message. Right? Delete it. Okay. So copy that. Delete this. Ooh, all right, as for labs, working. There we go. It's just missing one. So tedious, this stuff. That should be better. Any of you ever teach a class, you'll see. Oh, sweet. Okay. You got a couple are still working on represent, completed represent, working on counter, completed counter. All right. So, people move at different paces. You can always continue to work on this. I'm going to see if we can a lot more time during the afternoon lab to give you more time. Always goal is to get through this, to give you some more extra time to do this. And then we'll push up the solutions for the lab. I really want you to see them so you can get an idea of how it was, constructed, to get a better idea instead of just struggling through some things. I did help or jump in a few rooms, and I think the one thing I kind of want to stress when you're doing it is, use Google to look stuff up. So you have what we had done in class, what we had done in class may be limited, may not have all of the functionality, obviously, to complete the lab solutions. So feel free to Google it. You know, if you're having struggling with like the NGF and how to construct a proper NGF, just Google, you know, running a conditional logic NGF and see examples, and you might be able to construct that NGF statement based on what you see versus limited it to just what we did in class. Okay. Okay, so let's get started here. All right, so move that over there. Here's our objectives. Put this over here, and boop, there's my terminal. All right, Control. I'm just gonna move this over here for now. Get that out of the way. All right. So for the afternoon lecture, we are going to be covering making AJAX calls using the HTTP service in Angular. Okay, so, you know, just going over the learning objectives, I don't think we really need to describe what AJAX is, because I feel like we already know what it is. We kind of know what AJAX is already being used for. You've used it heavily in Unit 1. We know what third-party APIs are doing. Once again, everyone needed to do that. You should have all signed up for OMDB key, right? I'm hoping everyone got a key already. I know it just takes a little bit. You got to submit it, request it, they got to approve it. What the keys are used for, review the query parameters and how they can be used in third-party API requests. So we had done, I guess, parameters in Unit 2, where you did the colon and you put something there, and that something was then interpreted as a parameter. But there was also the ability to use the question mark symbol also, which we didn't really use. It might have demoed it, but we didn't use it as part of the solutions. But it's quite possible to use question mark, you know, title is equal to something, and that on the server side can be interpreted as a query string. It's really what it is. So we'll talk about query parameters. We'll set up the HTTP service to use within our app and start making AJAX calls. And then we'll incorporate data from that AJAX call, right? Same process. It's really going to be fundamentally the same process as requesting the data, getting the data, passing the data on, using then, right? Using promises, making sure we tell it the proper method, using the proper method. When we get it back, we then say, then, once this problem is resolved, do something. Here is the response data. Let's elicit the data values from that response object, because it is JSON. And then we can do something with it, right? So we know what AJAX stands for. And we also know, once again, that really what we're doing is sending JSON. That's kind of what we're doing. I think back in the days we were sending XML, but XML is, I don't know, it's not heavily used anymore, although some APIs do return data in XML. I've had some students want to use an API and, you know, think, oh, this is great, I'm going to find the data. They get the data and it comes back as XML. And then they're like, hey, I got the data. And my answer is always like, whoa, you know, try to find an API that returns JSON. And that's what we're teaching. If you want to do XML, that just adds a layer of complexity. We have plenty of third-party APIs. You know, Weather, Stocks Beer, everyone, you know, Unit 2 pulled data also or had static data. So even then, you could have gotten data from other sites. We're going to be using movies. There's lots of stuff. Once again, click on the list of APIs, but we had kind of gone through that. Now we're going to be using the OMDB, right? OMDB, that's OMDB, that's why, OMDB API, right? It's just a movie database. Here, we can pull movies from it. You know, you had to register to get it. You can become a patron, you can pay a little bit, get extra functionality. Once again, if you went to API key, this is how you would do it. I've already done it. If I try to do it again, it's going to tell me I already have a key. And then just how to use the API, right? So all of these parameters that we can use for the API. And then do they give us any solid examples here? So we have a title year, and then it'll kind of give us the examples that we want. So that's the API that we're going to be using. And once again, if we, I'm going to try this. I'm assuming the key is going to work here. Boom, invalid key. So let me try the key that I have, the API key. Let's see, does this work? Is this the same key? Nope. Nope, it's telling me invalid API key. MDB. Let me try something here. Oh, no, I tested the key, so I know the key that I have is working, because if I go here, I can get movies, right? So I just got a movie. I just did Star Wars. Oh, you know what? I think the key might be broken. It was just working because I got Star Wars. Star Wars, right? Yeah, here we go. Get Star Wars. So the keys are working. Let me just pull maybe on the other key that I have too, just so that I know it works. Here we go. Maybe this key. API key. Let me see if this works, right? API key. Is it that, or do I need the X? All right, so here's an API key. This one works, and we're getting data, right? Eraserhead, getting all this information, getting the poster. So this returns quite a bit of information that would allow anyone to build out a sample application, some sort of movie database type application, lots of functionality, show data, not show data, in our API, right? So that's our data, and everyone does see data. When you do pull an API request, does everyone, or would everyone have seen data in this format, or would you have seen it like this? Does anyone, when they do API searches, copy and paste API keys, see data like this? I'm just curious. I can give you this API.
I think for my Unit 1 project, I believe it came in looking like this.
Okay. Right. I just slacked out the eraser key, that key. I think we get like 1,000 requests. So you can test it out. Just don't abuse it. Otherwise, I won't be able to use it. Just copy and paste that into your browser and tell me if it comes back like this or if it comes back parsed. I'm just curious. I know it'll work, but.
I got parsed.
So here we go. Poll parsed or raw. Parsed. I'm just doing another poll. Okay. So there we go. Parsed or raw. Which one do you see it as? You're seeing raw? Okay. You got one raw, Jake. Jake's the only raw one. There is a tool called JSON Formatter. That's a Chrome extension. Oh, here we go. Chrome extension. JSON Formatter. Yeah, this is the JSON Formatter Chrome extension, Jake. So I would install that. I'm assuming everyone else installed the tool at some point in time, but if you don't have it, Jake, just install it. It's a tool that you want. Anytime you make an API request, it's always nice to go to the parsed view, see it here in the browser, and that way you can kind of interface with the data, collapse it. It's really impossible to like look through the raw data to see the things that you want. Just not a good way of doing it, okay? Awesome. So we're gonna create ourselves that little mini movie app, okay? Our little mini movie app is gonna show data, just like this, okay? We're gonna return data, and that data, we're gonna have a search field so we can search, we can click a movie, we can get a movie, we can show the info from the movie. That's the ultimate goal. So in the student examples folders, we're gonna create a couple of, oh, excuse me, sorry. I'm gonna create some structure here. I'm gonna just open up, go into your student examples. right? I am in instructor examples. I'm going to get out of my first app, make sure I'm in instructor examples. Cool. And I am going to mkdir, movies folder, go into movies folder, touch app.js, index.html, boom. And then I already have Atom open. I want to open up a new window, and then here's my movies, everything movies. Let me just close all this stuff, get rid of the keep, boom, boom, here we are. Okay, add some HTML boilerplate, all right, boom, exclamation, tab, easy enough. I'll copy the Angular URL too. You should all have that from the last lab, but once again, I'll just paste it here. And just for, actually for sake of simplicity, I'll just go in here, I'm gonna grab all that information and I'll just paste it in here, okay? Not having to go through the process. Doing that, cool. Let's make sure, the only other thing we're gonna do here, you know what? Let's just make sure you're all okay. Put down the thumbs up when you're done. Just setting up that portion, just with the script tag and the app. That's really at this point in time all I want. Open it up here. Nothing's inside of it right now, so we're not going to see anything. Cool. 6. Get yourself there. We'll start adding to. You only got 6 thumbs up. Oh, 12, 19. All right, looks good. Looks like we're catching up. So the other thumbs up. Okay, so start working on our file. All right, so we know that in our app, right, we linked app. Here in the HTML, we're going to connect to our application. ng app is equal to movie app. So we're connecting to our app. We'll set up the controller in the body also, because we know that's ultimately going to be happening too. So ng.controller is equal to main controller as CTRL. Okay. Saying we could evaluate 2 plus 2, we're not going to do this. We don't need to put inside the body that to enumerate that as of right now. Just going to jump into the app and just start adding our app, right? Const app is equal to Angular module, right? Movies app, and just the empty brackets for now, okay? It's really all we're doing. We're just setting it up. I'm gonna save this, gonna save my HTML, everything's saved, gonna go here. I'm just gonna make sure that there's no errors, right? Do I see any errors? Let me refresh this. Angular injector. I don't know if we had gotten this the last time. I'm just trying to think. The last time we did this, I think it was movies app. See how I have movie app? And here's movies app. Let me just make sure here it is. ng app is movie app, right? And this is movies app. So this is where the disconnect, okay? So I'm going to opt to do movies. So I'm just going to update the ng app in here since it's like a movies app. I feel like that would be more appropriate. But once again, same error that we had earlier today, right? Now what happened here? controller's name is not, the controller with this name is not registered. Main controller as controller. Oh, we didn't create the controller yet. All right, so that's a different error now, right? And we're gonna head on to creating the controller as well. Let's go ahead and just create the controller, right? App.controller, main controller. Now here's where we're going to be importing the service, okay? So it's a little different construct than what we used earlier. We did have an anonymous function the last time, but we didn't have the brackets here, or did we? Let me take a look, did we? No, we didn't have brackets inside the controller, and now we have the brackets inside of the controller. So let me just go here. This looks good. Close it. I'm going to save it. I'm just going to see if I got rid of any errors. No possible errors, right? So this is the structure right now. Let me go here. Okay, just make sure you got that. Make sure there's no errors, okay? Someone can initiate a thumbs up there. Make sure it's all good. Sweet. No errors means that the things are connecting, apps being loaded, the controller that the app is configured to reference is accessible, okay? So we're at 13. Any errors that you may have here is like if you forget the comma here, that's going to be a problem. If you forget that comma, that's going to be a problem. You know, misplacing or the configuration of the brackets and the curly braces, that's going to error out. So if you do get any sort of error, take a quick look at it. If you can't really figure out what the error is, then, you know, copy paste this. If it works, then at least you know it's just a syntax error. And you can figure out the syntax error. Okay, looks good. All right, so we're gonna call our app here. Once again, we're gonna create a variable app name. This can be whatever we want. Once again, I'm gonna copy and paste this name. You know, this is what the other instructor, I think they were referencing their IA at the time. That's their name. Since that's the name we're going to see later on, I just prefer we'll stick with the naming convention used there. Now that I have this as a reference point, I can go into the HTML and in the body say, hey, you know what? I have an H1, and this H1 is going to say, hey, welcome to opening and closing, because we want to enumerate ctrl.appName. Okay? If this works, again, I'm just going to copy and paste what's in the body here. Test it out. Let's move this over, and there you go. Oh, but I'm not seeing the rest of it. All right, so CTRL, did I misspell it? CTRL, main controller. This should have enumerated. I'm not seeing any error message, so I'm going to go back into my app. This
doesn't look like you saved app.js.
Oh, didn't save it. Okay, cool. There we go. There we go. Right, easy enough. Our app is configured at its most basic level, tested it, made sure it works. Okay? So now that we have the control, all right, so I'm gonna wait. I don't wanna blast through it. I'm like torn between, you know, taking time to get through it, pushing the pace just a little bit so that we can get to the lab and you can get more lab time. Once we're done with this, we'll start setting up the HTTP service.
Joe?
Yeah.
Can we take a moment and explain what's going on with the controller parameters? I'm not entirely sure why we have an array there and what everything in the array is doing.
So when you pass in services, passing in the services requires that we use just once again, just the construct of Angular requires that we use brackets. Like we're passing in an array now instead of just kind of an anonymous function that really wasn't passing anything in, right? And then I guess the question is like, if it was an anonymous function, if I just go back to what it was before, right? It was just an anonymous function, wasn't passing anything in. We weren't referencing any services. Now that we are referencing a service, the brackets are kind of the indicator of the services, the array of services that we're passing in. And then the last value in that array is that function that we're going to be running. And any service that we would pass here, we would need to pass it through this functions argument list here as well. Once again, it's just the construct of Angular. So if you don't have any services, then you don't have to worry. If you are going to pass in services or multiple services.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but
No,
I'm getting some crazy. First, it said that Angular wasn't defined, and I think I fixed that, but now I'm getting a reference error, and it keeps making me go to sources, and it's still saying Angular is not defined.
Okay. Why don't you share and see if we can resolve this.
It's probably a typo, I feel like, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if it's going to be a typo, then I'm always going to default back to like copying and pasting what I have, just to see. Can you expand it, make it bigger?
There's a command plus, right?
Or just expand the, yeah, maybe do that. Okay, there we go. So movie app, there you go. And then app.controller, movie controller space, function HTTP, this.name. That
The function shouldn't be $HTTP. It should just be HTTP.
I thought that's what Joe had.
let me see.
I could have sworn you had the. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought.
No, here it is. No, it is. It is $HTTP Jeremy.
My bad.
All right, there's times I type stuff, Jeremy, and if somebody says it's not it, I have to question my own self because sometimes I don't know. So what's the error? Show me the error. And you saved all your files, right? Just want to make sure your files are saved. Everything's good.
It's like at first it was just coming up with a regular error. Now, apparently my inspector doesn't like me anymore. I don't even know where it went.
Go to
Can you
DevTools.
get your HTML file?
You got your source. You got your controller. Now,
You're not defining your Angular source correctly. You gotta wrap it in the src attribute.
That's because well, script source, isn't it?
is it still airing out?
I'm gonna reopen it just to make sure, because my dev tools wouldn't come back up. I don't know why.
Yeah. What does that say?
Injector modular.
I think that. Yeah, try doing this. Just try. Let me see here.
You have to close the script tag. Back indexing after JS and the
Oh yeah, no closing.
There we go. There
Is
you
it
go.
working?
Yep.
Sweet. All right. All right. So we're good. All right, and we're gonna, now that we've said app name, right? We've gone to index. We've output it. Everything looks good. Okay. So once again, seeing the name, welcome to. We're gonna start working through the HTTP service. Okay, so they created their own, kind of like, jQuery created its own version of, or wraps the default kind of JavaScript Ajax request in its own construct, right? So $.Ajax, and we can make Ajax calls. Angular is similar to that. They've wrapped the Ajax call inside of $HTTP. So when we make the call, that's really how we're going to be making it, using this. Okay, we need a URL to send. So that hasn't changed. That URL that we copied and pasted in here, this also needs to be configured for us to send it, right? And then we have to figure out how to send query parameters so that we can request a specific movie, right? Capture input, grab that input, construct a URL, send the URL over. A way to send the data, if it's a post or a put. We're going to get into that next week, but remember, our goal is to create a single page app. And being a single page app, we're going to be using Ajax to send the requests to the server. So we're actually going to need sometimes the full URL to send to the server to say, here server, and I want it to be a put. I want it to be a delete. I want it to be a get if we wanted to get data, or a post if we wanted to post data. Okay, so these methods are things that we are going to reuse in our single page app design, and we're going to be using that kind of from the front end, where we send these requests over in an Ajax request. Okay, so we'll get the data, do something with the data, handle errors. So when we use then, there's a catch method also that we can use in order to deal with, what if the server's down? What do you want to do? Our promise will never get resolved, so we need to kind of do something in order to notify the user or to mitigate the fact that we're not getting the data. Okay, so this HTTP object is going to require a few things. The method that we're going to want to make, the URL string for sending data, how we're going to send the data object as key value pairs. So we're going to build out the URL itself in order to request the data. And just kind of like what we did with the API key here, this is how we would build out our API key. This base URL is the base URL. See how it has the question mark? And that question mark would have been here. See where the little question mark is? That question mark right there is what we're going to be using. And this particular API uses T as the title of the movie. So it'll interpret T on the receiving side as being the title, and it will then take the value and then query its database for the title that equals whatever it is. And then it'll validate our API key just to make sure that we have permissions to request the data. Okay, this is the structure. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste that in here. We're going to put it in. I'll show you where we're going to put it in. So let me just paste it out. I'm going to go to the API controller here, and I'm going to paste it right there. Okay. Move it over. I'm sure if we all type that in from scratch, this would take a moment and we'd run into errors. I know I would. So just take a moment. You can either copy and paste it, but if it doesn't work later, I'm going to say copy and paste it. So it's like, hey, API or query string not working. My first suggestion is going to be just take copy and paste that, see if it works. And we'll go through it. Once again, it's easy enough as just saying, hey, base URL, right? If I take this URL here and I put it here, we can then kind of break it down, right? Here's our base URL right here. That's the base URL. We have our API key, which states that that's our API key, and it's going to equal your API key. So you need to, at this point in time, take your API key and put your API key between the single quotes where it says your API key, okay? We're not going to change the query. That's what we need. T is for title. Once again, the query would be changed if we were doing maybe year. Maybe Y is going to be year. But we're going to leave T. for the title, and then it's going to equal whatever we want, right? And then the movie title is Eraserhead. That's what we're looking for. And then when you build this API, this is what it looks like. Base URL, API key. I mean, you can flip the structure of this. The API key can be before the query string. That looks like what it's doing. The and sign just means there's multiple things that we're passing. Okay, so we're passing multiple parameters. The first one is a T variable, and the second parameter that we're passing is the API key. And the movie title will be that title. And once again, just going to save it. How's this console logging it? Just, I suppose, to make sure it works here. Let me just see console log this dot search URL, right? Oh, it's URL uppercase. Okay. And if I run this right now, let's see what would happen. Boom. Can I read property search URL? Oh, console log because I didn't put. Console log. What am I doing there? Console log. This, that search URL. There we go. Okay, so it's just console logging the URL, the structure of the URL. So make sure the structure is that, everything looks good, put everything in the place that it needs. Okay, it's good. If that's your URL and you know that it's constructed properly, then copy and paste it, put it in to the browser, run it one more time, and you should get back that, okay? Just make sure this URL works, you're getting the data. And once you do that, we can move into constructing the HTTP service. Okay. Looks good. 11, 12, 13, 14. If you're done, just click on that. If you want me to go ahead while you catch up, you can click on it too. Full 17. Awesome. Looks good. So now what we're going to do is we are going to configure. So we console log. We know that that works. Awesome. We're going to configure the HTTP service. So we're going to take what would be something like, don't type this, but if we had, you know, jQuery, right? We're going to take that construct. We can kind of see that's the same construct, right? This would have been parens, curly braces, because we're passing in an object. But instead of $.ajax, we're doing $HTTP. It's almost identical, just the naming convention has changed. We need to tell it what kind of method, okay? And the method is get. We're going to get the URL that we're looking for, right? And then what is the URL? What's the URL we're looking for? And the URL we're looking for right now is, you know, this dot search URL, right? Now our URL already has the movie title. So in essence, if we were to get it, that should be successful in getting it. So I'm just going to put a little note here. Use the HTTP service to make an AJAX request. Okay, so we're doing making an AJAX request. And so making that request, we would get data, and similar to, or identical to the way jQuery works, we're going to have a callback. This is a promise, right? So what happens in here is a promise. We're making a promise. If this thing works, then we do something, okay? And the then is, hey, we're going to get a response from the server, and that response should have our data. Now you can call this whatever you want. Once again, that is the argument that we pass in, but that argument could be called data, could be called res, whatever it is that you want to call it. That's really all we need to do. And let me just copy paste this, put this into, well, okay. I'm going to test it. I'm just going to make sure it works. And there we go. I got my data. No different than a standard AJAX call. Okay, so you can, what I kind of want to point out here too is like the fact that you learned jQuery, you learned kind of one library, right? And the construct of that library and how to make API calls. Now you've moved on to using the Angular library, right? Or the Angular framework, which is essentially a library, but it's considered a framework because it's more structured, right? It's more opinionated in how you write the code and structure it. The fact that you knew how to make an AJAX call when you see something like this in any other language, I mean, in any other library, the way they constructed it, you would understand what's happening there. As a developer, what you're going to, if you haven't already come to the understanding, is that the different libraries or frameworks are going to do the same thing. They have their own kind of methods, functions, services, controllers, directives, whatever, to do the thing that they all do. They're just going to do it in their way. So if I just remove this, if I got rid of that and you looked at it, in your head you would have to say, oh, that's an AJAX call. So it's just about learning how that particular framework or library does this, okay? So we made the call, we got the data, now we have to do something with that data. That's the intent here, right? The intent is getting it. And once again, if I just go back, we got status 200, right? And so our data is really located in data. That's where it's located, right? The response is an object, a JSON object, and what we truly want out of this object is .data, right? That's really what I would want, and data contains all the data. I don't necessarily need the rest of it. The response, 200, okay. I don't really need that. I want the data. I'm going to be able to handle the error later on using using the .catch. So there is a catch method that we can use to catch the error, or if we do get an error, okay? So we'll focus on that in a little bit. So we got the data. There's all our data. Now let's discuss the error handling, right? So we know that here we're console logging to see if we get the data. And now we're going to handle if there's an error. So inside of here, I'm going to say error. And then we would console log, hey, you know, this is error and error, okay? So also promises have a catch method that help catch any errors. Okay, so we did that. Now we're going to do this. So the then took in two parameters, right? It took in this function, this anonymous function, and it took in a second in case there was an error. And then if there is an error, that would get passed to the catch block, and then catch block would then say, hey, all right, pass me the error. And then we can also, once again, just console log, you know, hey, we're inside the catch now. And here's the error, okay? So we'd have to produce the error, right? So I'm going to save this, going to make sure everything just works. I didn't break anything. Everything looks good, right? So what if I wanted to break something in the API call? So what if I tried to go to, I don't know, HTTP, you know, com with 2 M's by mistake? Like I just did that. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that. Boom. So now I'm going to trigger an error because that URL won't work. Okay, so I'm getting this is error. Here's the error that we're getting. Okay. And we see the error. This is error. Here's our error. And we see, oh, headers, method get, can't get the error. Okay. I'm going to go back and fix this. I'm going to go save it just so that we know that's our error. Okay. Okay. Everyone looks good. So as long as your URL worked the first time, you shouldn't have any problems. Okay. Because the only thing we are going to be changing at some point in time is the movie title, right? So this whole movie title here is going to have to be dependent on capturing some info, and then we're going to have to update that info. Okay. That's the ultimate goal, what we're going to try to do. So here is the final, right? Here's the final. Just going to make sure everyone's looks like this, right? Looks good. That's our final request at this point in time, okay? You tested it, you made sure. Okay. So now what we have to do is trigger our thing to do something. Okay, so what do we call something like this? What's the name that we've given to these ng type constructs within the HTML? What's the name of it? Okay.
Hey,
How about
Joe,
Thad? What's the name? I'm going to start picking on people. Thad.
No clue, Joe.
No
No
clue.
clue.
Molly. What's the thing called?
A directive.
Directive, correct. Okay, it's a directive. Just remember, anytime you see ng within the HTML, that's a directive. That's all you have to know. It's kind of, and just think, a director is directing Angular to perform a specific action or to do something. That's all it's doing. It's directing it to do something. Okay, so in our HTML, we're going to add a directive that is going to do something, right? So I'm going to go to my HTML here. We don't have a lot. I'm going to put it underneath our app. That's our title of our app. And here I'm just going to, I'm going to add a form. Boom. I'm going to go into our form. See, our form is telling us action. We don't have an action right here, right? We're not ultimately going to direct ourselves anymore, so I can get rid of action. Okay, we're not going anywhere. We're not using the form to send something to a URL. Ultimately, later on, we'll be using AJAX calls to do that instead of that. And so right now what we're going to do is say ng dot submit is equal to ctrl dot get movies. Okay, we know that this doesn't yet exist. And inside of here, we're going to say, let's give a button. And the button is going to have a type. And that type is going to be equal to a submit. Let's just tell them to submit, right? We learned the other day that during project time, when we're looking at Pooja's project, that inputs have type and the type can change things. I can take an input and give it a type of button, I think, or type of submit, and it'll change it into a button. It won't even look like an input field anymore. Okay. What do we call this though inside our controller? What was I referencing this as? What was I referencing that as? Sarah, what was that referenced as? This function.
Function.
It's a function, but inside of the controller, I was kind of referencing it in terms of when we were doing classes and objects. What did I call
I don't remember.
it? Okay. Owen, what do you got?
I don't really remember either, but it looks like a method to me.
Yes, right? Isn't a function that's attached to an object a method? Hands down. If you see a function call here preceded by a dot, right? That dot means that the thing before it, this thing is an object. Because it's an object, the dot represents that this thing either is going to be a property or a method. The fact that we have parens indicates that it's a method, okay? So we have this get movies method, okay, that we're going to need to do something with, because if we go into our app, right, we don't really have a get method. We don't have it just yet, right? We haven't created it. So if I was to test this, if I was just like, hey, let me go in here and let's just make sure, hey, I got a submit button, boom, I click submit, nothing happens. I don't get any errors, but nothing happens, right? So sometimes Angular's like, hey, the controller's not there, or it's not renamed. Those are specific errors. If you saw some errors in your HTML, you get errors. Here, it's just like, you're asking me to execute something that doesn't exist. I don't really think it's a big deal, so I'm not going to error anything out. So what we need to do is to create that method, right? So I'm going to go back in. We're back in here. And what I want to do is, I'm just going to do this here. I'm going to first do this dot movies is equal to an empty array. Because we're going to get data back from our AJAX call, when we get data back from our AJAX call, I'm going to store it in movies, this dot movies, and it's going to, the array is going to be populated with data, right? That's the idea of what we're trying to accomplish. Now, we want to populate this, so I'm going to go back into my response. Once again, I'll console log the data, but I would say this dot movies is equal to response dot data, right? Easy enough. Now, we were talking about is Angular data binding one way or two way? Anyone want to kind of feel that? The data binding, so when we bind data, if it changes in the app.js, does it update on the screen? CJ, what do you think? If I update something in the JS file, is that immediately reflected, right? Okay, so that's one way. Now, if I update it in the HTML, would it be updated inside of the JS file?
I think so.
Okay, I'll take that. Oh, so if it's happening both ways, what does that make it? One way or two way?
Two way?
Two way. All right, that's important. That's one of the distinguishing factors between Angular and React. React is one-way data binding, and Angular is two-way data binding. Okay, that's an important thing to remember. Angular is always keeping track. And if you update something in the HTML and it hits the JS, then they both will have a reflection of each other. It's a really cool way of doing it. Now that we have this, let's surround our HTTP call and get movies, right? Just going to do this. I'm going to surround this like that. I'm going to push this over so it looks like it's nested, right? That should be it. I'll slack this out so everyone has it. So I'm going to slack out the whole thing just in case. Okay. It should be it, right? And I'm going to test it. That's what I'm going to do.
Arrow in the function.
Here?
Get movie.
This right here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need that because we're going to be creating a function, right? So there's two ways to create functions: functions declaration and function expressions. Anytime you store a function, I'm sorry, the fat arrow, that's what you mean. Yeah, apologies. Missing the fat arrow. So I'm going to go edit this.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Is it? I know you're I think a couple of us are just kind of falling a little behind.
Okay.
Could you slow it down just a hair for us?
Okay. All right.
I feel like we're rushing through it, and I know I'm speaking for myself, but I'm getting a little kind of caught back.
Okay. Where are you at right now? Do you have this? Is the app.js kind of where it should be?
I'm following you as far as because I'm just kind of copying pasting from the markdown, but
Got
I
it.
don't think I'm like following you as like what everything is supposed
Got
to
it. Okay. All right. So, yeah, I don't want to lose anyone. So stop me, ask me questions. I definitely want the material to kind of be ingested versus just copying and pasting and banging it through. But let's think this through now. I have a method, right? This method, it's a function. The function needs to be called, right? Function can be called within the controller if I want it, right? If we want it inside this controller, I could say, hey, this dot get movies and call it. We could do that right now if we wanted to, but that's not where we want to call it, right? We have a ng submit associated with a form that's on the page, right? So if I go back to the page and I refresh, we have this submit. Clicking on this submit will trigger this method, okay? That method, by calling it, triggers the HTTP request to make the call to get the data, okay? Anything could have been in here. We could put any type of code that we want in here, okay? But we want the AJAX call to only happen when we trigger it, correct? That makes sense? Like, I want the AJAX call to perhaps only run when someone types inside the input field. Otherwise, my app is always going to default to Eraserhead. The last thing I want is to do, everyone who starts my app sees Eraserhead, because then people think my app is about Eraserhead, not about finding movies. So we want to leave the HTML empty and allow them to trigger this. So now that we have this set up, if I go back here and I click on ng submit, boom, it triggers the HTTP call, right? And once again, we're using ng submit because, you know, on a form, what is the event listener? Like, what do you type in? What is the event that you listen for on forms? Anyone?
Submit.
Submit, right? And so appropriately named here is called ng submit. It's listening for submit action. So it is, I'm going to call this, it's not referenced in Angular. In React, they do kind of reference things like this, like as a synthetic listener, right? It's an aesthetic event handler. It's listening for the events now to do something, right? So if it hears it, it triggers that method, and that method makes the API call, okay? That's what's happening in a nutshell. Now we're getting the data, right? So Eraserhead is what we're getting. Now we need to do something with, excuse me, with the data, no? Making a call to get a bunch of movie data. What I would like to do now is to cycle through that movie data and do something with it, okay? Now what we need to do is, in our HTML, we're gonna need to add some place to put that data, right? We have our form, right? So this form here, you know, submits, triggers. So I'll just put here, clicking on submit will trigger ng submit to execute or to call the .get movies method, right? I get rid of the dot, the get movies method. Now that we've done that, let's do something with that data, okay? So I'm going to take a look at how the data is returned. I see that the data is returned in this object, right? It's an object, looks good. There's ratings in here, that's an array. So learning how to parse through the data also is pretty key. It's pretty important to know how to do that. So let's go back in here. Okay. So I'm going to do this. We know we make the call. We know we get the data. Let's do div. I'm going to create my structure right now. Okay. And I'm going to say inside of the div here, I'm going to say ng repeat movie in CTRL dot movies. Okay. So for every movie in there, do something with it. Awesome. Okay. Well, what do you want me to do with the data? Okay, so for I'm going to create an H2, and for that H2, I want to see the movie dot title. Awesome. Okay, and I also want to see the movie dot year. What we want to see. Okay, cool. What about, hey, I also would like to see an image. Okay. For the image, we're not going to use SRC. We're going to use ng-src. Okay. I'm going to get rid of, oh, I put ng alt. Let me get rid of this. I'm going to get rid of the alt altogether for right now. Just do ng-src. And in here, we are going to tell it that we want to go to movie.poster, okay? Because that's where the URL is coming from the poster, okay? So we have the movie. Going to go to the next line here. We'll do an H3, and we'll say, hey, starring movie.actors. Okay, it'll show us the actors. An H4. Whoops. What's the plot? Movie dot plot. Okay. An H5. Genre. Movie dot genre. And an H6 for rated and movie dot rated. Right? Looks like in the HTML they put a question mark. Not sure where that question mark came from, but don't do that. I'm going to test this out, and then if it works, I give it over to you. Let's see what happens. Boink. All right. So it looks like it works. I just want to make sure it works before I copy and paste it. Okay. Give me a thumbs up. And you're good.
Hey, Joe, just so I make sure I'm getting this right, for ng repeat, that just means it's going to go through the whole array we have?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, in essence, like the movies, though, it looks like it's returning an object, correct? It's almost like this is an object, not an array at this point in time.
Right.
But it's doing it, right? When you did it earlier, it was looping through an array. So I think Angular knows whether it's an object or an array. Like, it just knows. If it sees it as a singular thing, then it's still going to treat it as an object, right? And because we still reference it based on dot notation. When you had done it earlier for your app, we were looping through stuff, right? So here's context. Context is clearly an array. And in our HTML, we were doing ng repeat. Ng repeat contact in contacts, right? Contacts here is clearly an array that has objects, right? Has objects. And here, as of right now, we know that the data that's being returned was an array. Oh, here we go. Actually, you know what? Control down movies. No, because we put it in movies. I'm sorry. It is an array. I forgot we were storing it in movies, right? So what happens here is when we make this call, we get the data, we store it here. The minute that this variable is updated, the minute that it has data, right? It's two-way binding, right? So that's why I asked this question earlier, two-way binding. The minute the data is added to here, that triggers Angular to say, hey, this thing, I'm monitoring this particular value. If that value changes on the server side in the app.js file, I'm going to update that thing in the application. If there's a reference to it in the application, I'm going to then trigger whatever needs to get triggered inside of the application. So it's monitoring both of these things. And because we made the call, we got the data, we populated the thing, ng repeats like, all right, cool, let's go through this, right? That make sense? Okay. Any other questions? Because I think it's about time to take a break. I'll give everyone a chance just to step away, take a break, come back, confirm everything's working. If you're having any issues, reach out to me. I'm just going to go get some water. But if you are having any errors, just reach out. Try to help resolve it before we jump back in. Okay? So, what is it? 3:36. Break time. Break time. Come back at 3:46. There we go.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah. What's up?
Can you pull up your app.js tab?
Sure. There we go.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm gonna turn off my video on mute, but I'll leave the screen sharing on so you can see. Okay. All right, we're back. We are back. All right, so yeah, so I posted in there. If you're caught up, cool. Now I'm going to do this also. So git status, git add, git commit. Let's see. Added git movies method. Moink. All right. I'm pushing up what I have too. So if yours isn't working, if something's broken, you can always, once again, take a look at what I've just pushed up. You'll be able to do a comparison. Instead of the copying and pasting, you could copy and paste the whole thing, obviously, but so just while we wait for one or two of you to kind of catch up, is there any questions about what we're doing? Anything's kind of still up in the air as to what something is doing? If you don't know what something is doing, now's the time to ask.
Hey, Joe, I kind of want a little bit more clarification on the catch versus just the regular error that we're doing.
Yeah.
What kind of errors is the catch going to get versus the regular error on the then?
From what I think is it's getting back the same errors. I don't think that this is any different than this, to be quite honest. I'm not used to writing it like this. Usually, if I was to write this out, I would have written it somewhat like this. I'm just going to remove, hold on one second. Let me just take this back. We would have had the semicolon closes this. So I would have done something like this. I'm just going to test this out. I'm going to see if this works, and construct looks good, right? I get the data looks good. I'm going to produce an error. And I get the error. See the catch? The catch is kicked off now. What I think is in the construct here, because earlier the catch itself, that message wasn't really being kicked off, right? I see catch here, and I see whatever the error is. And this error is going to be the same error. Now I'm going to go back to what we had earlier. I'm going to go back to this. What we should see is this is the error, but I don't believe we're going to see the catch. So let me refresh this. Let me submit. It works. Let me add the M. Let's do this again. I don't see the catch. What I think is in the construct of this particular method, if you add a second parameter in then, if there is an error, it kind of gets handled here. It's not getting passed to the catch, because if it was getting passed to the catch, then we should at least see this console log, correct? I personally would have written it more like this. This is how I'm used to writing it. Not doing the callback, I usually separate the methods themselves to indicate that this is the then, this is the return promise, and then this catch handles the error. Right? But there's more than one way to do it. I think maybe when they were coming up with the lecture and they were doing it, they might have shown this way and then added the catch afterwards. I can't say. You know, all I know is that it works with the callback as part of the then promise, but the catch doesn't execute because the error was handled previously. So I would prefer to do it like this, and then that way the method names themselves kind of stand out. Like here's a then and here's a catch. That's kind of how I would have constructed, unless I'm missing something with why we would have needed to do it the other way. This is kind of how I would have constructed it.
So then basically we can infer that it's basically unnecessary to have the two, kind of based on that then?
I'm going to say so too, yeah. I would take a look. I can take a look maybe while you guys are doing lab, and just take a look at the HTTP method and see if they do reference this at all and this together. I found it when we ran it the first time that I didn't see the catch. I didn't see this being stated. because it's not being stated, that kind of insinuates that that the catch method isn't being executed. So I think the callback is a throwback to how things were done. Just like in the world of Ajax, Ajax used to use success and I believe error as internal methods within the object, within this object. And then with the new version of jQuery, they moved it into a then and a catch. So I think the other way is kind of a throwback, but I'd have to confirm which way, or we need both. I personally don't think we need both. I think the catch is doing what we need. Any other questions?
Hey, Joe, can you run through this get movies function real quickly with your comments for each line?
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like you
No,
usually
no,
do
I
a
got it.
really
Yeah.
good job at that. Thank you.
So let's do this. So I'm going to move this comment inside of here because that's what that's doing. So let me just go to the top here, right? So creating a get movies method that will make an API call, right? That's what this is doing. We're storing it, the anonymous function inside of get movies, and then we can call this anytime we want. So we're going to use the HTTP service to make the Ajax queries, just as we used $.ajax when we use jQuery in jQuery, right? It's the same concept. This method is doing the same thing. This is the method we're using, right? Possible to use post, put, delete. Okay, we're still hitting. Now remember, because we're making a URL request, right? Inside of that URL request, there is going to be a method in the header. The method tells us, are we hitting the get route? Are we hitting the post route? Are we hitting the delete routes? Okay, so these methods, what you don't always get to see, I'm just going to see if I have the tool installed over here. Do I have, I used to have this tool called HTTP headers. I don't think I have it installed anymore. Here we go. This is JSON formatted. Is this cores? No. Nope. Yep. I used to have, now I don't have like the three little bars here to show what's in here. Is this it? Oh, here we go. Here we go. I'm just gonna go to the extensions and what is the extension? It's like a little cloud. I think I turn it off. HTTP headers. Here we go. Bloop, bloop. Here's this little HTTP headers, right? No, here it is. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna go back. Cannot retrieve. I think you can't retrieve it because it's a local application. You can't do it locally. So let me see. What if I do this? Can't do this either. What if I do this? Can I? Cannot retrieve it. Try to reload the page. All right, let me try reloading the page. Here we go. Do you see what this is doing? It's making a GET request, right? This is in the header. The header is like, go to this URL and make a GET request. No different than when you created a route. When you created routes, it was like, I don't know, what was it? App.gets, right? Something like that. If this was a delete request, it would be app.delete, right? Okay, and then we'd send data, right? With delete, we'd probably want to say, what do you want to delete? And we'd give it an ID, right? To say what the thing we want to delete from the database. If it was a patch, we'd say what the ID number. So this method indicates what's the action. When we send the URL, we're also sending the method. And that method on the server side is going to be interpreted as one of these routes, okay? So one of those things is going to get hit on the server side, right? Here we're just saying the URL for that route, okay? That's all we're doing. We're saying here's the URL, and here's the method. No different than like when you did a form and you did the method was equal to post, where the method was equal to, you did underscore method to tell it that you wanted it to do a different method instead of post, because forms are for posting, right? Dot then is dot then is run once the call is complete, right? Because this returns a promise, okay? So when the call is, and I'm not going to say complete, but successful, okay? HTTP returns a promise, and I'm putting it in uppercase because promise is a type of thing, right? It's a promise, and a promise is kind of like a special class of things. And so then is run when we get the data. We console log the data. We store the data inside of this .movies, right? And that was defined up here, okay? Once this .movies is updated, this, go to the next line, triggers React to update the DOM. It's going to trigger an update. It's going to trigger React to like reevaluate. If anything is pointing to this thing, then it lets those things know like, hey, movies has just been updated. I'm going to send it out there. I'm just going to kind of do, it's kind of like Jeremy when he created his app, right? He created a message app. So when you typed in a message and you hit send, it sent out that message, right? And any of the listeners that were there were listening for the message and they got the message. This is the same thing. The minute that movies is updated with new data, that triggers out a broadcast stating that anything that was referencing movies is now to be updated, okay? And then we have catch, right? .catch handles any errors, right? Handles any errors in case the AJAX call failed, right? Maybe the server's down, maybe you mistyped the thing, whatever it is, okay? Cool. Jeremy just posted that using success error, finally catch here. Yep, so here you go. There's get, there's success. This is an old way of doing it. Once like success, we're not really doing that. We're using then. I don't see then. To me, this is similar to the old way of doing this.
Well,
Okay.
that's the guy's question. Like if you scroll down a little bit.
Oh yeah, here you go.
It kind of goes into a little more detail about a better way to handle it.
Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, the promised version is very similar. This is what we're doing, right? Then is what we're doing at this point in time. Then and catch. Those are the new promises. Promise version doing it. There's lots of ways to do error checking in the past. You could try catch blocks, try this, but errors, catch the error message and do something with it, okay? Let's go back here. Does that help, Lauren?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, cool.
Yes, more of that, Joe. More of that.
Okay. Wait a second, Thad. More of that, right? Just want to make sure we're clear. All right, cool. I'll try to put as many notes as I possibly can. Okay, promise. I promise. I will
The
try.
notes really, really help because when I go back later, I sometimes I just have no idea what these things are doing.
Okay. All right. Well, I will put as many notes as I can. Let's go on a note, adding notes quest. All right. So let's hit it. Let's take it the next step further, right? We know that we can get the data. I'm just going to go back. All right, this is our app. I submit. I still got my catch because I put in the M. Going to get rid of that M. Going to save it. Going to run it. Did I do something wrong here? Oh, no. Here we go. It works. Just want to make sure it works. If it doesn't work, we got to go back to square one. All right. So now what we're going to do is we need to create a model here. So let's see what it says here. All right. So we're going to use the directive NG model. So once again, anytime you see NG anything, we're talking about it being a directive, okay? So in our HTML, we're going to be adding a NG model directive, okay? So once again, I'm going to put as many notes as I can here. We're going to go back to our form, and in our form, right, we had the NG submit. You clicked on that, it got the movies. But that's pretty hard-coded, and the movie that we're getting, once again, pretty hard-coded. It's in the thing. Like, I don't want it to just always get that movie. I want to allow the person to type some input, right? So we're going to put an input field there. We're going to use text as the input because that's what we would like to collect as input. Now I'm going to do this. I'm just going to, instead of putting it all on one string, I'm going to just separate these properties onto different lines so that we can kind of make a little bit more sense. You'll start to see that this is a structure some developers use to kind of make sense of all the methods, all the attributes being added. So placeholder, placeholder is what we want to see in the input box, right? Movie title. It's easy enough. You were doing that for your apps. NG, now here we go, NG model. So let me type this and then we'll add some notes. CTRL dot movie title. Okay, just gonna make sure I got movie title. All right, and then we close this. So the input, just gonna put the closing there, okay? So NG model is when we collect data. Remember, this is two-way data bind. So I'll put a note right here that NG model will capture the data inputted into the input form, right? Into the input field, right? What it does is you type something into the input and we grab the data. I would say that's similar. What NG model is kind of doing is it's similar to when in jQuery you would have done something like grab the input.val and you would have gotten the value back, right? In jQuery you'd have to be like, all right, they submitted the form, grab the input field or grab the form and then do like event.value.val or something like that, right? You need to elicit the value from the field. An NG model is doing just that. It's eliciting the value from the field, right? Which means if we have NG model here, we're doing two-way binding, right? If something changes on the front end, I can trigger something to happen on the back end. If something happens on the back end, I can trigger something to happen on the front end. No different than when we were in app.js, we made our call, I updated movies, this updated this. By updating that, we triggered an NG repeat over here, right? NG repeat is triggered, maybe I'll put that here, if this dot movies in the controller is updated, then it triggers NG repeat to loop over and put that here. Output that new info as HTML, right? That's what it's doing. Okay, so NG repeat was happening on the back end. That gets updated, triggers the front end. NG model, we're capturing data. And because that data is being updated here, we're going to create in-app a placeholder for this particular value. Okay, now we have movies. That's our array. And now we are going to create the movie title variable that coincides with NG model, right? So if NG model grabs something, we're going to store it in movie title, okay? Which once again, if movie title is updated, anything that's listening for movie title will do what? Will trigger the movie title, right? So anything in here that's listening for movie title will then trigger this thing to run and execute. Now, movie title is right up here, right? Whoop, that's where movie title is being referenced, okay? And so in our method here, right, our search URL, we have our search URL is equal to, you know, our base URL, our API key, this query, and that. And now what we're going to do is if we do this query, we are then going to trigger the thing to run. Does that make sense? That's what we're going to be doing, okay? Let me just take a look here. So this .api key, we got our base URL, our API key, and this .query. I think that should work just like.
Do you have to change that this dot movie title equals Eraserhead, or does that it just?
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this here. Hold on a second. We're going to get rid of this, right? Because we're not going to be running any sort of movie immediately, right? We're not going to be running that movie. And I'm going to get rid of title right here. I'm going to get rid of this. Because we're going to run the app.get. All right, yeah, I'm going to get rid of this. All right. This is what we're
Does
doing.
that make the line on 16 redundant?
On this 16?
Yeah,
You know,
with 9.
you know what? Just trying to think. I think so, yeah. So actually, let me comment this out. We don't need that one here. I forgot we had movie title here. My apologies. We had movie title here. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to move this comment here. Let me put it right here because movie title was always there. I just saw it in the context of this. I forgot. Movies. I have movies down here. But I just saw this. So movie title is empty now because we don't want to make a call to anything, right? We want it to be empty. But where we do want to update is, see the search URL? Now remember, the search URL up here, we created it like this so it would immediately run and we could test that we were getting data, right? That's why we did this. So I'm just going to comment that out because we don't need to do that anymore. What we need to do is when the movies apps is clicked, right? So when this submit button is clicked and movies gets triggered, right? NG model is updated, right? This model updates this value, right? In here, we can use that value and say this dot movie title, okay? So once again, NG model will update this key, okay? When you submit it, it'll update the key, right? You enter the field, da, 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 da. This thing gets submitted. When we submit the button, we then just query what was stored inside of movie title. And then we should be able to see movie title in action, okay? So let's take a look. Let's take a look and see what's happening. I can always come back here and just add some more notes. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna make sure the HTML is working. I didn't break anything. Of course I broke something. Unexpected token. Is it this? Yeah. Let me see if that was it. Yeah. Can't put a semicolon there. I was just following this, but don't do that because that'll break it. All right, so let's try. I'm going to try once again. I'm just going to type something that I know works. Star Wars, right? Submit. I get Star Wars, right? I get Star Wars back because movie title, every time it was kind of updated, was changing the value there. So when you submit it, NG model is like, hey, when you submit the form, grab the value that you typed in that's stored in NG model, update movie title, right? And so create the movie title variable that coincides with NG model, okay? When NG submit is executed, this will update movie title with the value typed into the input. Okay? That's what's happening. Every time we do this, I'm going to do this too, because I want to actually say, I want to see if I console log. I want to see if it actually constantly does the update or movie title. I'm just going to put a little note here and say, this is movie title. I'm just going to see. I go back here, right? So this is movie title. Nothing's there. No. See, so it doesn't update. It's not like a dynamic update. It's not that every time I type a key, that thing gets updated. I type this key, that thing gets updated. That's not what's happening. But when I do submit, it won't run this anyway, because once again, this application only runs once, right? All of these kind of get defined once, and the only thing that triggers updates is this. That's the only thing that's going to trigger the application to kind of do something again. All right? So this is empty the first time, so I'm just going to get rid of that because that doesn't really do much. Okay? So let's take a look here. I think we got to the end of it. So let's just see. What else can I help explain? Where do we feel like we're at? When I did add a bunch of additional notes. Do we need any other explanations as to what's going on? Everyone's so like, I don't know what to ask. So why don't we do this? Why don't we be Mr. John Phillips? I know, right? No one wants to get called on. Tell me what's happening inside of this get movies method. What is that doing?
Inside that method, you're just doing a get route for the request of what you put in. I'm sorry, for the movie title, and you're just running that whole function. Okay.
And that function is making a get request, right?
Making a get request with the API info from the search URL plus the movie title, and it's responding with either the data or an error.
Bingo, right? That's it. When we get the data, what do we do with that data? What happens on line 34 when we get the data?
It's putting it in the array.
Okay.
Response
And-
data array, and then it's passing it into the index.html.
Cool. All right. So Owen, I'm going to move on. Owen, when this dot movies is updated with new data, what does that trigger? If I was to, at any point in time, update this dot movies with new information inside that array, what is the net effect of that? So right here on line 17.
Yeah.
Clicking on this get movies, getting the data, making the call, getting a success back. This thing has new data inside of the array. What does that trigger?
So, I mean, if it has new data inside the array,
Mhm.
then your AJAX call is going to look for that new data. Is that what you're asking? I'm not sure what you're asking me.
Oh, okay, so we just kind of completed the AJAX request, right? So inside of this AJAX request, this dot movies is updated. This dot movies is the same thing, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it just gives you something new to pull onto your HTML page.
Exactly. So when this dot movies is updated, it triggers Angular to update the HTML, correct? Two-way binding, right? Two-way binding. So is Angular one-way or two-way? Two-way. And when this gets updated, that triggers this to update itself as well. ng repeat will be triggered because ng repeat is meant to look at the movies variable in the controller, and anytime that thing gets updated, it gets updated, boom, oh, wow, it just got updated. I got to do something. It's like a trigger event. That's really what it is. I mean, ng submit is a trigger event, right? That's an event listener. We know what an event listener is. You click on something, something happens, right? You submit something, something happens. Hover over something, something happens. Those are events. NG Repeat has an event listener associated with the movies array. And if that thing is updated in any way, shape, or form, added or removed, NG Repeat will be executed. So NG Repeat in itself is some sort of event listener also. Okay, and they're bound together. They're like bound together. Changes in one cause this to change or to execute those changes, right? The directive of NG Repeat is to always monitor the movies array, and if it's updated, make the change. That's what we want to do. Okay. NG model. Let's see. What we got here? Like who is there? Jose. NG model. What is NG model doing?
Is it rewriting the movie title?
Yeah, right? NG title. And what triggers NG model to do its thing? What's the trigger event?
The new data being pulled in?
Okay, but what triggers that? What triggers me to grab that new data?
The submit button?
Bingo. NG, the directive of NG submit is an event listener. Clicking on the button triggers NG submit. And NG submit then will run this method, but also will update title movies, right? Once title movies is updated, this get movies has access to or requires that value, right? Make sense? Okay. What else do we got here? I think that's it. I mean, I think we got this down. We got this. Is there anything else anyone's kind of perplexed with?
I just have an error. I think
Okay.
it's probably a typo, but I'm not sure.
All right. You want to share your screen? Let's take a look.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. All right. I already see. So what I see here, Iris, is there. It looks like you're outputting onto the HTML.
Mm-hmm.
NG model. So what I'm going to assume is that the HTML for that input box is not created correctly. That's my
Iris, you have to move your comment on line 24.
Move my...
Yeah, your comment.
Remove it?
Relocate that to like between 20 and 21.
Yay.
Sweet. Easy enough, right?
Wow. Why does it do that? What's wrong with having
I'm
a
not sure
comment?
because I have a comment here right in the middle and it seems to work. So I'm not sure what it was. I know it was seeing, anytime you see like the directives or some sort of JavaScript being output on the screen, there's just something syntax error in the HTML because it's outputting this thing as HTML instead of encapsulating it as like the attributes of the HTML element. So I'm not sure. But you're good. Anyone else? Going once. Twice. All righty. So let's do this. Why don't we take another 10-minute break? Oh, we're about a little 10 minutes early, but why don't we take a 10-minute break? Come back and I'll assign the lab. Give you a lab, take a step away. I'm gonna post the lab. So just give me a few minutes too. So 4:30, come back at 4:30, and then I'll post the lab. Okay. If you have questions, reach out. If you think of any questions between now and then, reach out. Take a break. Come back at 4:30. All right. All right. Everyone back. Bloop. I'm going to send out the lab. I'll just go through the lab, show you what's supposed to be doing, and then work together. Just 1 second. Either, yeah. All right. So Emma, can you test your audio just to make sure? I got your Slack. I just want to see.
Is my audio coming in? Because just
Yeah.
the videos will keep pausing mid like lesson, and then just the audio of the whole like Zoom call will go out.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
So your audio's good.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Okay. All right. So lab is really to continue what we were just doing. You have a structure. You're going to extend that structure. So what we had done here in this is, I set a movie title specifically, right? So if I was like, hey, Mission Impossible, I got Mission Impossible, right? One Mission Impossible, not multiple Mission Impossibles. And that's because we're using in our app, we're using, move this over here. We're using the T, and that T is more like the title. Only look for this thing. Find a matching thing. If this was changed to be S, well, that would change things significantly. Okay? So if I was to type Mission Impossible here, I'm getting something very different. I'm getting all the Mission Impossibles. Okay? And the difference is between using the S and the T. So you can easily Google it. I mean, in the end, change the S to the T and should probably work. So what you want to do is get multiple things, right? So after you get multiple things, show the title on the screen. So here, I got multiple things. I only want to show the title. I'm going to populate movies array, show just the title. Then what you want to do is attach an event to these things that if I click on it, blink, I see the Mission Impossible movie. I see some information. I see the poster and I see the title, and I have a return to list. I can go back to the list. I can go here. I can go back to the list. See how this is single page app? I'm not refreshing the browser. I grab the data and I'm just kind of cycling through what to see and what not to see. So there must be an event on each one of these, and only the active one is being shown. So if this is active, show it, show the additional information, else don't show the others. Remember, there's got to be some sort of if conditional logic here in order to bounce around, as well as this button here, right? That button comes out of nowhere and then it disappears. So there must be some sort of conditional logic there to be like, if single view is true, then show the button, else don't show the button, right? So we must toggle between the ability to show that button and not show that button, right? So there's some conditional logic here. So first and foremost, just try to change the query, show these things, show those, and then start working through, if I did click on something, can I just see the additional information, right? Maybe even leave the return to list button off for now. Just click on this. Maybe you'll just have them all still there and showing them. So maybe I could toggle between one and the other. Show this information, unshow it, and then maybe later on the add the return to list, right? To go back to see all of these. That's the ultimate goal. Okay, you're gonna have to work out the logic for that. I'm gonna create the rooms now. See, just make sure all the rooms are looking good. Okay. Create all the rooms. Probably pull you back maybe at 5:45, something like that. Jared will give the homework, and we'll wrap it up for the day. Okay, if you need help, reach out. Try to help you the best I can. Sweet, we're all good. I always take the quiet as being awesome. You're doing awesome. So open all rooms, and now you're off. Off to the races, peeps. Hey, Josh, you get knocked out or something, man?
Yeah. Can I get reassigned?
Reass-
My internet decided to go out on me.
Oh, I was just about to say, like, oh, does he not like his group? So
No.
you were at Flint, right?
Yeah.
All right. I'm like, wow, whoa, what happened? There's drama.
No, not at all.
All right, cool. I'm going to put you back in with Flint.
All right, thanks.